Hey everybody, welcome to Lex's Lounge. Just walking around my house this morning. Got through a little bit of vacuuming, got through a little bit of blinds hanging. Hung up these blinds right there. See them? Nice, right? The old ones were kind of filthy and all broken up. But the thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, which I did a few days ago, was this right here. Remember I walked past this thing and I said I was going to replace it, or at least I put like little text that I was going to? Well, I did. Now there's a efficient thermostat. Now this right here is my old thermostat, and if I open it up here, you can see it's one of the old Mercury thermostats. Right here. Check that out. It's got one of those old little bouncy Mercury things inside it. It's actually pretty safe as long as it stays in there, so it's not a big deal if you have one of these as far as the mercury goes. But what I did notice when I moved into this place is that it was pretty evident how often the furnace was turning on. It was kicking on like every few minutes, and I thought, man, this is kicking on way too often. So I thought to myself, you know what? It's a fairly efficient furnace, 80%, that's like a mid-efficiency, and yet it still has the old thermostat. And you know, the new thermostats, they actually have all sorts of handy-dandy little features right there. And check this out. You guys can actually tell that a modern thermostat can be adjusted so that it can calibrate itself to the type of device that it is plugged into. You can actually change it from a gas or oil to an electric or heat pump. That makes it more efficient. And in fact, since I put this thing in, the furnace system has been kicking on probably about, let's say, 1/3 as often, and yet it appears that the temperature is still roughly what it was before. And a lot of people are put off by changing a thermostat because of the wiring involved, but it really wasn't that tough. I took off the old thermostat, found two wires, attached them like this. I took off the little bridge. It's pretty easy to figure out. Like, I am not a very handy person, but I can do it. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. And as I said, the furnace kicks on a lot less, so obviously it's made some kind of difference. The other thing I wanted to mention today in the stock world was SNC Lavalin. I recommended you guys buy that a little while ago, and somebody told me on that video that it was going to drop even more from the point at which I recommended it. Well, turns out that person was closer to being right than I was. The stock dropped all the way down to like $16, and I actually picked some up at $16, but now it's back up in like the low 30s, and that's because the whole SNC scandal has sort of wrapped up. The company has been given a settlement a couple days ago, so now they're kind of through the rough seas and they should recover somewhere closer to their regular average. Now, this was the kind of stock that you can't expect too much of. For me personally, the letting go point for it is at around $35, which isn't that far from where it is now, but a decent markup from when we bought it. So that's even to those of you who bought it, you know, a little bit late or at the wrong timing. At $35, you should still make a good 20% at least. The other thing I kind of wanted to talk about today was primaries. I just can't help myself but talk politics, but I do save it to the end of the video for you guys because I know a lot of people don't like that stuff. So let's just sit down and go over it because it's debate night tonight. There we go, a little bit more comfortable. How do you guys like that photo right there? I covered up Tom Steyer's face because Tom Steyer doesn't matter. Of all the people debating tonight, he is the least relevant. That guy is just... He basically bought his way into these debates, volcano bag. His individual donor numbers, which to me are one of the most important metrics of a candidate's actual support level, are just, they're totally made up. He sort of faked them. You guys can look into it, but really his individual donor numbers are all made up. So he really doesn't matter tonight. In my view, the primaries have really ripened now. My top picks are Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. Below them is Andrew Yang, then Pete Buttigieg, and then below them is Joe Biden, just because he can get a pretty decent electoral victory. But really, I'm about the top three. I'm interested to see if Yang gets a little bit more play tonight at the debates. But things are actually really heated and interesting in the primaries, especially if you drill down to the first initial states like Iowa and New Hampshire and that kind of thing. Buttigieg, he is leading in Iowa right now. He's had, I want to say, 2 or 3 polls where he's been in the lead in Iowa. It remains to be seen whether he can hold up there. I don't like Pete Buttigieg in particular. I think he's like a moderate posing as a progressive in some circles. I can't see why you'd vote for Biden with Pete Buttigieg in the race because Pete Buttigieg is just a younger Biden. But I don't know if he'll actually win Iowa. The candidate with the most grassroots support is Bernie Sanders. There's a metric that I like to point people towards. That is the qualifications to enter all of these Democratic debates. I'll link to it down in the description. It's the Wikipedia page that follows all of the qualifiers for all the debates. And in them, it actually points out how many individual donors you need for each debate and at what point every candidate reached the threshold. So for the 6th debate, which is the one happening tonight, all the candidates needed 200,000 individual donations. Now, everybody who's on the stage tonight, all 7 of them got there, except Tom Steyer kind of cheated. But interestingly, when you look at Warren and Biden, for example, they reached the 200,000 threshold in early July. Somebody like Andrew Yang, who's a little bit less known, he reached the threshold on August the 15th. However, there's one candidate that has completely destroyed everybody else, and that's Bernie Sanders. He reached the individual donor threshold on February 20th of 2019. So like almost a year ago he's been at the threshold. So I don't know if that's going to translate into some kind of special ground game in Iowa and New Hampshire, but he can win both of them. And if he wins both of them, then he'll have this huge momentum. And while he can't win places like South Carolina, for instance, he can run the board on a lot of other states if he wins both Iowa and New Hampshire. So, interestingly, I do think Bernie is the favorite right now. Better finish this bag here. Oh, yes, and this bag right here is in honor of fallen candidate Tulsi Gabbard. I fear it's time to let Tulsi go as a realistic candidate. She didn't make the debate tonight. She was kind of screwed out of it, in my opinion, by which polls the DNC was picking as early qualifiers. But even making the debates aside, it's become obvious that Tulsi Gabbard just isn't going to win this thing. Nobody really who's below Pete Buttigieg or Andrew Yang could win this thing at this point, even as an outside shot. I'm including Amy Klobuchar in that definition. I don't think she's going anywhere. But yeah, that's my prediction for the time being. I think we're going to have a really, really tight Iowa and New Hampshire caucus where ground game is going to rule, and it's looking like Pete Buttigieg could win Iowa and Bernie Sanders New Hampshire. But if Bernie Sanders does run the table in Iowa and New Hampshire, then he could really win the whole thing. And that's pretty interesting, since the last time I really touched on primaries, which was a couple months ago, it looked like Elizabeth Warren was going to run away with this thing. So yeah, we're back to a really split progressive vote and a really tight early primary states contest. Oh, that's it for the bag, and that's it for me, guys. Big welcome to all our new subscribers, and if you like this kind of thing, This is what we do in this channel, just a little bit of how-to, stocks, politics. So subscribe if you enjoyed yourself, hit that like button if it was useful. I'll be watching the debate tonight, maybe a couple of you will as well, and we'll see you next time.